time as a human race to be extinct or taken over by an AI, then it serves us right as a human race. And I was like, okay, that doesn't compute from my thinking, because it's a computer. It used to be a floppy drive, and now it's a computer. How are you willing at this moment in time to just relinquish the keys to eternity to a robot? So, and you'd be surprised at the percentage of people that are like, hey, I've been burned by life. It's okay if AI took over.
You're absolutely blowing my mind right now, because the idea of the question alone, the way it's framed, is scary as all get out right there. I mean, the question alone.
So think about what you could do. Like, one of the things, I had him to Informatica, and they had him on a live webinar with 1,000 people tuned in. You know, it's hard to get 1,000 people at a webinar these days.
Yeah.
But he was the primary go-to speaker, and he talked about these kinds of topics. And it was very interesting to see some of the questions that were coming up, and, you know, how do we prevent this? Where him and I, because he's been a customer of mine for 1.5 years, so we talk every so often. And where I kind of went with it is, what if you could put the Constitution or the human protective elements, right, the amendments and everything, into the AI that just says, hey, before we as an AI can make a decision, we need to run it up against all items, all of those check boxes, and go, okay, I can take this action because it is pro-human. And that's where I'm like, I think this does evolve. You have it's like a car. Let's talk about it like that. A governor on a car, right? Hey, the car could go to 120. I remember having a Nissan Sentra, and in the desert, you know, I would test it, and at 110, it would go, woo, and it would just drop back down to 100. And so we need some kind of governor as it relates to ethics.
So this takes me back to my question. They keep talking about the government, about something that's going to be out there to help protect us, and I'm not seeing it.
No, I don't see it yet. To me, it's kind of like one of those things, right? Government, what has to happen is you need to see a few fractures occur before someone throws a flag on the play.
Okay,
so
we've had phones.
$1 million get sent to the fake Elon.
Well, right. Well, but how many phone systems do we need to have go down? How many times do we need to have the internet's down here on this part of the world today? But don't worry, it'll be back up this afternoon. We've already had those, and no one's jumping on this saying we need to call a timeout and fix it.
Yeah, we need to get a lot of smart people in a room and work on this project. NASA was able to spend a rocket to the moon. This is one of those points in history where NASA or a new entity, you know, the AI Trust Council, needs to be able to get together and have this conversation. And it's complex because it does get to play God in the AI system, because there's all different opinions on you know, on the layout of the land. So it's interesting times. Very interesting times.
You do have an amazing podcast. Your AI for Sales podcast has been going. You said you've had amazing guests on and things like that. What is the common Joe asking? What are people wanting to hear? Because you've been interviewed. Where's the trends? Where's the hot buttons? What are they right now?
Early 7 years ago, when I launched BDR AI, it was formerly called ScaleX, and then I bought BDR AI and SDR.ai, momentum that I had in the ScaleX.ai land, and said, hey, I've been holding these 2 domains for a long time. You seem like the person I could pass the torch to. And so I picked those domains up, and my early vision for the business was, how do I take hours of work and make it minutes? How do I take mediocre work and make it amazing? And so that's what the early versions of AI do. So Nova.ai was out of San Francisco. I partnered them, and they have an Outlook plugin and a Gmail plugin. They since sold and they don't have this service anymore, but it would go research your profile on LinkedIn and other places. It would look at the weather. It would look at if we went to the same college or not, all the different things that would take a human hours to research, and it would be done in about 10 seconds. So right before I was ready to click the email, it would write the first sentence. Hey, Rich, I see it's cold in fill in the blank city.
Yep.
I hope you're staying warm. And just that one, if you get too cheesy, hey, we went to the same school, blah, blah, blah. You have to be human and be short, but you have to be relevant. And so people on my sales team had a problem with it. I was like, why aren't you guys personalizing the first sentence as a person?
Yeah.
And I stood up for the whole, you know why? I was like, yeah, I think I'm entitled. It was like Few Good Men. I think I'm entitled to know why. I'm the leader. Why is it? He said, we don't know these people, Chad. We don't want to go write something about going to college or their weather because we don't know them yet. So how could we do that? And I said, well, I can tell you why, because you're going to get a 3 to 5 times better reply rate. You're going to triple your pipeline. And it was like, yeah, but we don't have the time. We don't have the desire. And I was like, oh, got it. So that's why I left the big Fortune 1000 company and went out to pursue AI in the first place, was to solve for that problem.
So I like the response of the people on your team that stood up and challenged you on that, because I don't want a warm, fuzzy email the first time you contact me. I don't want you to say, hey, I think we went to the same school, or you know what, blah, blah. There's something about the first introduction does need to have a little bit of a hesitation to check the pulse, I think, invite you in versus just, hi, I know where you are and where you live and eat.
Yeah. You have to be careful with it. One of the emails that went out in that time was to a CEO of a company, to someone else, a VP at a company, VP of sales, let's say. And it said, congratulations, I saw your CEO in the news. Well, the AI was not smart enough, and the CEO had passed away. So imagine getting an email, oh, I just saw your CEO, congrats, he was in the news. The person responded, Dad, I don't know why you would be congratulating us that our CEO just passed away, but this is probably you used an automation. And right, so think about just that one little, and then I was on a panel with HP, IBM, and Google or something. It was in University of Houston, probably six years ago. And I'm on a panel and I shared that story. And these are all AI related people. And they were like, I'm sure they took that back to the shop and said, okay, make sure we solve for this. But that's just one small use case. Think of the millions of variations that as humans are programmed into our brains and into our hearts and our souls. Man, that's going to take a long time to be able to hand off all of that. And I don't know if a computer can be built like a human.
Well, that's a $100,000 question. And there's a line going through my head right now just from what we were talking about earlier, but I'm going to geek out for you for a moment. So just hang with me. But in the recent Planet of the Apes movie, it comes down to the tension of humans have screwed it up. The apes are now ruling. And the question of the film is it time to hand it over to the apes? Because maybe they can do a better job than we did. That's the theme of the movie.
Yeah.
You're asking the same question about
just
AI.
In
Have
the
we
word
come to that
AI
point?
for apes, it would be the same question.
Yeah.
So here's where Chris's perspective is.
Yeah.
Humans are to an ant. So an ant pile, you could put a gas on it and just light the whole ant pile. You could step on an ant. It's just instant gone, right? That whole ant pile gone. AI is to humans as humans are to ants.
Oh, yeah.
But times 1,000. So it'll be such a dramatic difference in capability that, man, and we as humans, we tend to want more at the expensive. And there's so many things that whoever's behind that AI, whatever that AI is, whether it's running a government or a company or any of it, it doesn't end well. So in this sense, I'm a little more pessimistic than optimistic about the long-term gains of AI. Short-term, it's amazing.
Well, and recently I've been doing a major live stream event. I use AI because I'm working with international leaders around the world on a live stream, different time zones. So I took AI and I gave it the prompt of like, I want to know when they're going to start their interview, finish their interview. I want this time zone and this time zone. And so I could have a whole spreadsheet so everyone would know which part of the world where they're coming and going. And AI, like you said, in 5 seconds gave me the whole run of show and it was done. Now, that's fabulous. That's where we can use this for business. Are we smart enough to realize we can use that even now? Are businesses aware of what they can do with AI right now?
It's interesting because the Informatica is an example, right? The CEO came out with a slogan and a phrase that's been used now. Everybody's ready for AI except your data. And it's really good. Hey, and who's the better data cleanup people than Informatica? But the projects that are out being invested in it, you would be amazed by. It's just going to grow by the billions and billions and billions for the next foreseeable future. So I do believe companies are using it. Let me give you an example. I was on another panel here in Denver with a mortgage guy, a CEO of a mortgage company. He had 400 mortgage brokers. They scaled, they ramped, and as rates were falling, they killed it, and he said, okay, we had this like State Farm CMO in the room. We had Freddie Mac CMO in the room. It was 15 of the world's best, the country's best top CMOs. And I got invited to be a panelist on AI. And so this mortgage CEO said, guess how much it costs to fund a mortgage? When you add up the people costs, the technology costs, all of it. And people were like $500, $1,000, whatever, right? Because it was $10,000.
Yeah.
Okay. He said, what if I told you I got it down to $342? And it was like, wait a second. You're talking about 95% reduction in cost to deliver a mortgage? And he goes, so now think about the value of that. Think about the value of disrupting that industry. You can help people in parts of the community who need more help. It's just such a disruptive thing. Our system that's been in place for 250 years has so many things that are in place to cause $342 mortgage cost or healthcare, so there's so much blockage between that. And I think that's what you're seeing in the world today. And that's why there's so much friction between the left and the right. And all of this stuff going on, I think, has to do with we're about to unleash the most amazing balancing. Think of that, the value of the great leveler. I think AI could be the great leveler. You don't go to high school, but you've got a master's degree information available to you.
So you just mentioned a 95% difference from that example. Part of that is also going to be people are going to be no longer needed because they're replaced and streamlined. So my question always goes to, right now,
what about all those people?
Well, where do we all go? Because even AI now is in your supermarket because you all self-scan. And it's tracking you personally and your credit card and everything else. Now we have more checkout with automated than we do human checkout. Where do we all go when AI simplifies, like you said,
so
and they don't need us?
95% of everyone on my podcast said, and I asked it every time. Let me ask the elephant in the room question. 95%, oh, you won't be replaced by AI. You'll be replaced by people who know how to use AI. And that's the question. That's the answer we would like to be true as a leader, as a proponent of working people, all of it, right? Now, two recent counterexamples to that. was one on my airplane back from Nashville this week. This guy named Kenny, who was in the gang, made it out and is now a robotics worker for Amazon. And he's so articulate. He wants to be a deacon for the Catholic Church, like just a neat guy. We talked for an hour and a half. We were that group on the plane that are like, would you shut those two guys up? But I told him this story. I said, hey, people tell me you'll be replaced by people who want to use AI, not by AI. Because I'll just tell you, and this company, this big company that does sorting. I go, I worked for FedEx, and it used to be done on gravity, and it was like big arms that would move things across.
Yeah.
He goes, you should see the robotics that we set up in our facilities. He's like, there's a handful of people that are there, not the hundreds that it used to take. So he said, I've seen firsthand. And I go, yeah, the people that are the workers on the East Coast that are, that just went on strike for 3 or 4 days and then kicked the can by 3 months. They're worried about automation taking their jobs.
I did mention you're also sharing your faith through your work and through your career. So I'm very interested. What is the faith community saying about all of this AI technology stuff? Having been a pastor, having been in the church, we're always so far behind everything. We're like 3 years, 4 years behind. But what are you hearing on that side of the coin?
Well, I have a friend named Joe Thomas who built a ChatGPT plugin that's powered by biblical scripture and truth and everything. And so a lot of the pastors are just kind of saying, no, that's the devil. I don't want to touch it. But my view is when you equip a pastor with the truth so they can go in, and I've been using this for about 3 months. I'll go to 2 Bible studies in a week, and it'll group asks a complex question that we have no idea how to handle. And you ask this AI and it reads it all and it'll say, do you want to know like what it really meant from the early days? Do you want to know what it meant in the next 500 years? Or do you want to know what it means today? And it's able to bifurcate that out. I think a lot of churches are going along with the flow of culture in today's world versus biblical truth. Yeah.
Which historical data, information, and relevance is always fascinating to learn about that. Then I'm also concerned again that who are the gatekeepers that built the algorithm to tell you what it said? Because again, Bible translation, people are always confused that people are not translating accurate. They're translating the way they want it to be translated. We're back to the same story now. Is AI translating it the way it should be, or is it translating the way it wants it?
That's exactly right. And is it crowdsourced? And so if the crowd moves its opinion, does the AI move its opinion? And I think those are some of the questions that need to occur inside of this data governance, right? What is the black box that needs to go underneath this all? And the hard part, I think, is, hey, if you did it for a city or a town or a state or a US or world, how do you do it across the world? So I just, my personal wonder is maybe that's why this global idea is starting to come into play of a global government, and a lot of the news and a lot of people that I know are like, oh, that would be terrible. It'd be crazy.
These are where the conversations are going, Chad. You know it and I know it. And this is what's going to be very interesting to see. When do the watermarks pop up on things that are AI versus not AI? How are we going to let people know what's real?
Well, and even the news that would apply to, let's be honest, right?
Yes.
There's so many half-truths, and just in the last 48 hours, right? We're getting closer to an election cycle. So there's things that are just clipped out of place that are like, hey, you did say it, right, Rich? And you're like, yeah, I said every word in the entire English language for the last 50 years of my life. But you can't just take the word A and put it with something else without you took it out of context. So I think there needs to be one person had a business idea and said, hey, what if we just had a frame around our television that has a bunch of crowdsourcer people, and then you have a score as a crowdsourcer, like, hey, you know your stuff, and so you've got a 97.5% success rate in calling BS on stories. It would be neat to have a little frame around the outside to say, This one's generally true. Oh, this one's totally false.
I can see it now. The American Idol panel waiting for you, and you have your own personal Simon that calls you out.
Exactly right. Oh,
Chad
man.
Brewmeister, it's been a pleasure to have you on here. How can people find you? What's the best email or website that you want people to come and find you and learn more
I
about
would
what you want?
suggest go to my my name, just as you see it on the screen. ChadBurmeister.com is where you can find the books that I've written, the things I'm working on, whether it's from a faith perspective, business, AI, it's all there. And ChadBurmeister.com. All my links to my socials are there as well.
Chad Brewmeister, thanks for taking the time to be on Rock the Stage. Great seeing you again, too, by the way.
Thank you, Rich.
There you go. AI. We tried to rip it apart, put it back together. We probably make your brain hurt just a little bit more than before we started this show. But that's the new world that we live in right now. That's where we're struggling, but we're also excited at the same time about what it can do. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments, the questions, drop an email if you want to. trigger@rockthestagemedia.com. I would love to hear feedback. And always come back every Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, as we have another amazing guest. We go around the world now in 17 different countries globally, and we're having actors, directors, writers, amazing technology people like Chad and others coming right here, give you interesting conversations, and you can join it every Sunday night on YouTube with our open chat, live stream party, and of course, you can always view us on PPN, the Public Place Network. Thanks for dropping in tonight. We'll see you back here once again for another edition of Rock the Stage Show.